Welcome to Study In. The Sri Lankan economy has been facing a crisis owing to a serious balance of payments (BOP) problem. Its foreign exchange reserves are depleting rapidly, and it is becoming increasingly difficult for the country to import essential consumption goods. The current Sri Lankan economic crisis is the product of the historical imbalances in the economic structure, the International Monetary Fund (IMF's) loan-related conditionalities, and the misguided policies of authoritarian rulers. Why is Sri Lanka suffering from crisis? When Sri Lanka emerged from a 26-year-long civil war in 2009, its post-war GDP growth was reasonably high at 8 to 9% per annum till 2012. However, its average GDP growth rate almost halved after 2013 as global commodity prices fell, exports slowed down, and imports rose. Sri Lanka's budget deficits were high during the war, and the global financial crisis of 2008 drained its forex reserves, which led to the country borrowing a loan of $2.6 billion loan from the IMF in 2009. It again approached the IMF in 2016 for another $1.5 billion loan. However, the conditionalities of the IMF further deteriorated Sri Lanka's economic health. Recent economic shocks. The Easter bomb blasts of April 2019 in churches in Colombo resulting in 253 casualties, consequently, dropped the number of tourists sharply, leading to a decline in foreign exchange reserves. The newly led government by Gotabaya Rajapaksa in 2019 promised lower tax rates and wide-ranging SOPs for farmers during their campaign. The quick implementation of these ill-advised promises further exacerbated the problem. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 made the bad situation worse. Exports of tea, rubber, spices and garments suffered. Tourism arrivals and revenues fell further. Due to a rise in government expenditures, the fiscal deficit exceeded 10% in 2020 to 2021, and the debt-to-GDP ratio rose from 94% in 2019 to 119% in 2021. Sri Lanka's fertilizer ban. In 2021, all fertilizer imports were completely banned, and it was declared that Sri Lanka would become a 100% organic farming nation overnight. This overnight shift to organic fertilizers heavily impacted food production. Consequently, the Sri Lankan president declared an economic emergency to contain rising food prices, a depreciating currency, and rapidly depleting forex reserves. The lack of foreign currency, coupled with the disastrous overnight ban on chemical fertilizers and pesticides, has sent food prices soaring. Inflation is currently over 15% and is forecast to average 17.5%, pushing millions of poorer Sri Lankans to the brink. How has India assisted Sri Lanka in this crisis? Beginning January 2022, India has been providing crucial economic support to the island nation in the grip of a severe dollar crisis that, many fear, might lead to a sovereign default and a severe shortage of essentials in the import-reliant country. More recently, India extended a $1 billion short-term concessional loan to Sri Lanka to help the country as it faces an unprecedented economic crisis. Why helping Sri Lanka is in India's interests? Crucially, any disillusionment in Sri Lanka with China eases India's effort to keep the Lankan archipelago out of China's string of pearls game in the Indo-Pacific. It is in India's interest to contain Chinese presence and influence in this region. To the extent India can extend low-cost help to alleviate the hardships of Sri Lankans, it should. However, it must be done with due care, keeping in mind that the optics of its aid matters too. India's assistance. It would be completely unwise for India to let the Chinese take over expanding chunks of Sri Lankan territory. India must offer Sri Lanka financial help, policy advice and investment from Indian entrepreneurs. Indian businesses must build supply chains that intertwine the Indian and Sri Lankan economies in goods and services, ranging from the export of tea to information technology services. Preventing illegal refuge. The state of Tamil Nadu has already started feeling the impact of the crisis with the reported arrival of 16 persons from Sri Lanka through illegal means. Tamil Nadu was home to nearly 3 lakh refugees after the anti-Tamil pogrom of 1983. The authorities, both in India and Sri Lanka, should ensure that the present crisis is not used to step up smuggling activities and trafficking or whip up emotions in both countries. Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Study in